Welcome to the Darkstream. VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic. Big meeting today. There's a lot of stuff going on with the G20 and all that sort of thing. But as far as I'm concerned, what's really important is the fact that the God Emperor met with Vladimir Putin today. There's a lot of hatred that the neocons have for Russia. They've been pushing very, very hard to try to start a war between Russia and the United States. In fact, I am absolutely convinced that the election of Donald Trump prevented a war between the U.S. and Russia, because if Hillary Clinton had won, she was going to invite Ukraine and Georgia into NATO, and that's something that Russia is never, ever, ever, ever going to permit. And so what probably would have happened in between the election of Hillary Clinton and the inauguration, Russia probably would have moved in. They already had, I think, 600,000 troops on the border. They would have moved in and taken over Ukraine entirely, probably Georgia as well. So, we already escaped a close run there. The second attempt of the neocons to start a war with Russia was over Syria, and it got very, very heated there. To the extent that the Russians actually, for the first time in probably since the Korean War, the Russians shut down American air supremacy. Americans still had the advantage. They probably, if they had actually engaged, the Americans probably would have been able to restore, air superiority. But the fact that they were able to challenge American air supremacy was a very powerful message. It's the first time it's happened in decades. So what's going on? What are they meeting about? As usual, the media is completely useless. The media is going on about, did Putin hack the election, blah, blah, blah. No, he didn't hack the election. He had nothing to do with it. It's absolutely ridiculous, and they spent absolutely no time talking about it. Trump himself came out and said, I asked him, and he said no, and I accepted that. Okay? That is diplomatic politician speak for, it's a stupid issue. We don't pay any attention to it. So what? What's actually happening? What's actually going on? What's actually going on is they're actually discussing North Korea. I personally suspect that there is going to be military action against North Korea in the relatively near future. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I have absolutely no, I'm not Mike Cernovich. I have no connections into any of that world. But what I strongly suspect is that China is going to provide the troops on the ground, and that the U.S. is going to provide the air support. That's why the carrier groups are in the South China Sea, or the Yellow Sea. If you look at the map, you can see pretty clearly how the strategic situation is set. I've been reading a lot of Jomini recently, the great Swiss Napoleon general, the great Swiss general who was employed by Napoleon. And he's very big on geometry, and it is interesting because when you understand the geometry, when you look at the geometry, you can see how actions are set to take place. Now, obviously, somebody has to pull the trigger. But the minute that I heard that Trump was going to be meeting with Putin, my first thought was, okay, he's already met with Z. They already know the US and China already know what's going on, but they need to get Putin's sign-off. They don't want, there's already enough tension between the United States and Russia. There's already enough tension between Russia and China. Remember, they still have active border issues in the East. And so, when you're dealing with nuclear powers like these, you do not simply ignore them. You don't simply just go and act on your own, especially because North Korea is in a position to lash out by firing missiles at China, at Russia, at Japan. So you're going to want to make sure that all of those countries are ready in the event of launches being directed at them. So again, I could be wrong. Maybe they were doing nothing but discussing trade or Ukraine or Syria. It's possible. But the thing is, they met for 2 hours. They were not just there to do the handshake and talk about the remnants of ISIS. So, if you're thinking about what did they have to talk about that was so important, well, there's only one thing that's truly important on the international scene right now, in terms of the grand strategic level, and that is the North Korean situation. So, I've always expected Putin and Trump to get along extremely well. The meme going around, next year in Istanbul, I tweeted it myself, and next year in Istanbul, actually you mean Constantinople. So we'll see, but it is very good news, very, very good news that the United States and Russia are getting along, because that means that Trump is getting control of the deep state. He is getting control of the neocons. He's keeping them in check, and that means that he's going to start being able to move forward on, with his agenda, fulfilling his campaign promises and doing the kind of things that he said he would do. At this point, it's very obvious. It's always funny listening to the Democrats chime in with their ignorant comments. Trump is being played. For what? What on earth is Putin trying to play? I mean, you guys just throw these words out there. You're like chimpanzees attempting to provide color commentary of a chess game. You literally have no idea what's going on. And so you just throw these words out that you don't understand the meaning of. Trump is playing, Putin is playing Trump. To what end? There's literally no meaning to what you're saying. Just stop. You're not making any difference. You're not going to change anybody's mind. All you're going to do is convince us that you're a chimpanzee who doesn't know what's going on. And so, anyhow, that's right. I tell people all the time, rhetoric has no information content. No, again, here, first of all, it's misspelled. There's no meaning to what Trump is saying either. Of course there is. It's very clear what Trump is saying. In fact, the funny thing is, Trump speaks like an 8th grader in an attempt to communicate with people like you. Trump doesn't talk like that normally. I've talked to Donald Trump. He's a smart guy. He's an intelligent guy. He knows how to talk. But he has to speak in these very short little snippets, these phrases, so that retarded chimpanzees like you can understand what he's saying. Because you're just babbling. You're just saying, he played him. He's a racist. He's a poopy head. It's totally meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. And here's the important thing that you need to understand. We know this. You're not fooling us. You're not confusing us. We're just sitting there watching you going, going, really? You know, if you don't like Trump, that's fine. You know, go ahead. But, you know, feel how you feel. But don't delude yourself into thinking that you are even communicating effectively with anyone. So, anyhow, to get back to North Korea, we'll see what's happening. We'll see what's happening. But you know, the key thing that you need to remember is that the carriers are not there to bluff. If you're bluffing someone, you send one carrier. You don't send 3 carriers and have them just sit around doing nothing off the coast. However, because there are 3 carriers there, we know that there's not going to be an American invasion. How do we know that there's not going to be an American invasion? Because there's not enough troops. If you look at where the Marine Expeditionary Forces are and that sort of thing, I mean, even the Marines, even if they sent both Marine Expeditionary Forces, that wouldn't be enough troops to deal with the North Korean military. They're too big. And so, now it's possible that they could try to do some sort of, you know, stupid, you know, air power thing. But, you know, if you've read Martin Van Creveld or if you've read me, you know that air power never suffices. I mean, unless you're actually going to drop a nuke, air power is not going to work. And so, no, but I mean, missiles from submarines, well, I mean, first of all, I mean, you're either talking tomahawks or you're talking nukes. And so, yeah, the tomahawks won't do anything. How do you know what they discussed? Were you in the room with them? I don't know exactly what they discussed, but I do know what the various international issues are, and I do know what are the various things they might have discussed, and it is pretty obvious what they were discussing because there is one glaring major issue that sticks out like a very sore thumb, and it's the kind of thing that the leaders of 2 of the 3 most powerful nations in the world would actually need to discuss, which is North Korea. So, anyhow, well, of course the North Koreans, I mean, obviously the North Koreans know it too. Look, if you've ever read any military history, then you understand that nobody is ever surprised by military action. They might be surprised exactly where somebody chose to strike. You know, they will, you know, that's why militaries go to great lengths to try to look busy here, you know, distract here and then hit them there. But, and I believe that's what happened when Trump struck Syria the last time, when he launched those missiles at Syria. You know, a lot of people, Cernovich and stuff, they were convinced that, but here's the thing, they talked a lot about Syria too. Okay, what is the news reporting? Is the news reporting that they talked about Syria, or is the news reporting that they talked about North Korea? Go ahead and answer it. It's a question. It's not like I've seen every news report. Right. So they're talking about Syria, right? And the media has this idea that there is some kind of disagreements and stuff. Okay. But here's the point. They want the focus to be on Syria. The more that they talk about Syria, the more convinced I am that they're going to do, there's going to be military action against North Korea. Because that's exactly what happened the last time. When Xi was in Florida with Trump, they launched the missiles. Everybody's very excited about Syria. Everybody's very excited about how troops were going to be moved into Syria. And what happened? 2 carriers show up in the South Pacific. Yeah, this is normal. This is just classic. This is classic tactics. And so I am confident that they spent most of their time talking about North Korea, figuring out what they're going to do with North Korea. I suspect that the plans are already made. I suspect that everything is already set. And what they were discussing is, okay, is contingency plans. What if things go wrong? What if the North Koreans have a card or two up their sleeve? Those are the things that you can't know about. So, is China officially providing North Korea missile tech? I think they did. I don't think that they are. I think that China is going to act with the United States against North Korea. And I think that it will come out that Russia knew about it and Russia was supporting the action as well. So that's my take on it. Again, I could be wrong. This is just me applying my observations and logic. And so, no, I don't think Trump's Poland speech had much of an effect. The stuff that he said is stuff that Vladimir Putin generally supports, except for the bit about, the stuff as it touched on Russia. But, the Poles obviously have their issues with the Russians, and so, you need to throw them a bit of red meat. Putin's a pro. He understands that. So we'll see. The neocons, like I said, the neocons have been pushing hard for war with Russia for some time now. And so it's something. It's a really good sign that Trump is not permitting that, and it's a good sign that the 2 nationalists are focused on the real issues, because North Korea is a real issue. There's a lot of the North Korean situation is not going to get better. It is not going to improve on its own. And I suspect that China has finally realized they can't keep them under control anymore. And so, hopefully, I would much rather see them take the risk and have all 3 major powers deal with it now, rather than just wait. Is intervention in North Korea justified, or should we just leave it to Japan and South? It is justified. It is a serious situation. It is so serious that the Russians and the Chinese are as concerned as we are. How will they do it? I don't know. But if I was running the situation, China would provide the ground forces, and and the U.S. would provide air support. It's even possible that that the Russians might provide it. Well, the threat is obvious. North Korea now has ICBMs. North Korea now has the ability to hit U.S. territory in Alaska and in Hawaii. Look, something happened. Here's what you need to understand. Something happened. News broke of something around the time of the missile attacks on Syria. Something happened that really freaked out the Chinese and the Japanese. we know this. I'm guessing is that that's when China and Japan and the United States actually learned that the North Koreans had ICBMs. And now we know they do because they launched one successfully on July 4th. So, we now know. I mean, I said this in a dark stream at the time. I said this on my blog at the time. Something happened to wig out the Chinese and the Japanese. And so that's what's going on. And it's either going to, again, this is not a nut that's going to get easier to crack in 6 months or 6 years. And so at some point in time, we'll have to bite the bullet. So anyhow, so that's enough about that. I want to mention a word about Infogalactic. If you happen to be deemed a notable figure on Wikipedia, you probably have experienced people saying ridiculous things about you and putting up false things on the page about you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Even when you correct people, they tell you that you're not allowed to do it. Even if somebody else corrects it, they might throw it out because they'll claim that the source is not reliable, all that kind of crap, right? So how do you solve that problem? You can't really just let people go and edit their own page because they're biased. On the other hand, they are the best source of information about themselves, and they can set the record straight. So what's the solution? What we have decided to do, the design I came up with at Infogalactic, is that we've added what are called verified pages. And a verified page means that only the person who is the object of the page is allowed to edit the verified page. And so the verified page can only be accessed by that individual. The reason we call it verified is that if you are that individual, you need to contact us. We'll verify that you are who you say you are. And then you will be given an account and access to that one page that's about you. And only you will be allowed to edit that. No, this is not a revenue source, at least not at the moment. This is only for people who are what we'll call Wikipedia notable. So if Wikipedia has deemed you notable, as they have with me, then you can come to us and say, because if there's a page about you on Wikipedia, there's a page about you on Infogalactic. You can come to us and say, hey, I want a verified page. Please give me access, and we will arrange it, and you will have access. And then you will have an opportunity to set the record straight. Now, the good thing is, this is where I think the design is clever, is that, remember, the page, there's going to be, instead of 3 tabs, usually, you know how on Infogalactic it says page, and then it says discussion, which is the talk page. When there's a verified page, there's a 3rd tab in between those 2 tabs. So it's page, verified, discussion. If you click on verified, then there's only 2 options, which are discussion and page. The point being, your page is not going to replace the generic page about you. It is going to be right next to it. So you might not want to get too carried away in talking yourself up or in wiping out criticism or whatever else, because everybody is going to know that this is your version of your biography. So, it will say a lot about you if there's extreme divergence between the way that everybody else talks about you and the way that you're covered, or the way that your verified page talks about you. So I think it's a good compromise. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's a way to start doing this. So if you happen to be a notable person with a page about you on Wikipedia, if you happen to know someone who is, Mark Levine was complaining the other day about Wikipedia. If you're a fan of Mark Levine and you know him, reach out to him and let us know. Reach out to him and have him get in contact with us. So we're excited about this, and this is just one of the many new features that InfoGalactic is bringing. We're working hard on the new engine, which is going to allow us to do all the new features and all the perspective filters and all the stuff that we want to do. But this is a long process. So if you haven't joined the Burn Unit yet, which is how we pay for our servers, I would encourage you to join the Burn Unit. That's how we keep the thing going. Folks have been very helpful, and so and again, I would just encourage you to, if we don't care who they are. We don't care if they're SJWs, if they're alt-right, if they're just your random scientist or celebrity. If you're friends with one of them, if you know them, get in touch and just let them know that the option is out there. They have the chance to set the record straight. As somebody who has had all kinds of weird and nasty crap written about me on Wikipedia, I'm pretty sure that most people are going to be glad that they have the option to present their side of the story. Because let's face it, this is something that the media and that the SJWs in new media generally don't afford people. So, in any event, have a good evening, have a good weekend, and we will see you soon.